Folks, the Super Bowl is finally here. Honestly, Jacob, for me, I'm going to keep it 100% real. It's just getting in the way. This Super Bowl is completely getting in the way of prospect season. It is getting in the way of the big board. I entered into a big board this morning. A person then out of the one hole proceeded to select 20 straight Patriots or Seattle Seahawks players because they thought that they were entering into some form of showdown contest. This is obviously the lowest Q score Super Bowl of our lifetime. Drake May, who no one has heard of outside of like, there are football fans who still think like Jacoby Brissett is quarterbacking the New England Patriots. Sam, I'm telling you, dude, there are casual football fans who have no clue about Drake May. Like, they're going to be stunned when he wins MVP.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure if I was to pull like my law school group chat.
Exactly.
And it was like, who is the quarterback for the New England Patriots? Like, it'd be crickets on that front.
And if anyone is, if any of those people are familiar with Sam Darnold, they are familiar with Sam Darnold from like the seeing ghosts meme. Yeah. Like literally a meme.
Either seeing ghosts or out. Mononucleosis.
Yes.
Those are the two things that he'll be familiar with.
100 million%. So I am as excited about this game as I would be about like any given Super Bowl, in the sense that it's a great opportunity for gambling. It is a great opportunity to play against a bunch of the aforementioned people who don't know anything about the game in Showdown. The prize pools for Showdown are massive. The edges are going to be pretty large. I think there are actually a fair amount of interesting decisions for this very nerdy game that we are going to be playing. What's just kind of your high level view of the game, Jacob?
I mean, look, I don't want to hurt the ratings any more than they're already going to be hurt, but my initial lean is to the under in this game. I feel like both these defenses are pretty well set up. I mean, the New England Patriots offense, frankly, has just been terrible this whole playoffs. Obviously, they've played a run of really good defenses. They're about to play probably the second best of the four this week. So that's not going to be anything that relents. But I do think, generally speaking, this is a team that is going to be having issues. I think most of the success they've had in the regular season, somewhat similar to some of the stuff that the Rams are able to do, is they're able to kind of bait you into these heavy packages because they play a lot of fullbacks and multiple tight end sets, and they're able to get.
I mean, they're probably going to have two fullbacks active in the Super Bowl: Brady Russell and Robbie Utes. Yeah,
beautiful. And like they're able to bait you into some base and with their tight ends, and then they try to go over the top. They try to isolate Butte in single coverage. I mean, the Seahawks, as we've talked about all year, they don't care. They stay in nickel for everything. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to make you kind of, chunk your way down the field with Ramondre Stevenson. And then, on the other side of the game, I think that the Patriots defense is about as well set up as you can be on this to stop the Seahawks team. Their run defense, when Milton Williams has been in the game, has been extraordinarily stout. When you look at where Seattle has some issues, protection-wise, it's up the middle. And if you're going to stop a Seattle passing attack, you need to be able to get that internal pressure. No team has, I think, as good of a defensive tackle pass rushing duo as Milton Williams, Christian Barmore. So I think it's going to be a bit of a slog, to be honest. We can talk about how that affects DFS. But my overarching thought is I think that both these defenses are pretty well set up to stop both of these offenses.
Yeah, I mean, this is my first time discovering that these were the number 1 and number 2 offenses in net adjusted yards per passing attempt, which I guess does sort of make sense. Like net adjusted yards per passing attempt, if you knew nothing else about how to diagnose a team, that would probably be the number 1 statistic you'd want to look at and figure out how good they are. Now, obviously, the issue with this, and I don't know where you fall at in terms of like Corain to like a New York Giants fan who hates the New England Patriots, on how you want to evaluate the performance of the aforementioned Drake May in the postseason. I mean, to say that Drake May has been bad in the postseason would be accurate. To say that it matters might not really might also like not really be accurate, because he just kind of did what was asked of him. I mean, he had 86 passing yards in the conference championship. I wouldn't say that outside of a couple of the Texans game dropbacks that I was like, oh, like this is concerning to me at all. Like they were just never going to lose that Chargers game. They could I think they could have played that Chargers game 100 times and the Patriots probably win 99 of them. Like I don't know. The Chargers were just never in serious contention. In that game, the fumbles and the sacks are maybe what would be a little bit concerning against this team. He has been I mean, like legitimately sack prone in the postseason. Will Campbell, I mean, you talked about it
Yeah.
when we did thinking about DFS. Like Will Campbell's just been brutal. He's just been getting beat up. If you look at runningbacksdon'tmatter.com, you can see that Sam Darnold has basically been far and away the best quarterback in this postseason. Leads in EPA per play, EPA plus CPOE composite. You've got Drake May, slightly better than Stroud, Herbert, Stidham, the quarterbacks that he happened to beat on the way to the Super Bowl. Before we get into any real specific DFS stuff, which we are about to get into, I would say this. I am not necessarily making the philosophical argument that that people will often make about like NBA teams, like, oh, it's just too early for them. That applies just far less in the NFL because of like the sample size and the variance is just so crazy. Whereas you actually will often see that in the NBA. It actually, a better team might lose because they're just not ready yet, like mentally or whatever. I wouldn't say it's too early for this Patriots group. I promise I don't mean this in a disparaging way. I just think it's kind of an accident that they're here. I just think that if you play this season a number of times, we are living in one of the very few finite realities where the New England Patriots make the Super Bowl.
I mean, look, this is self-serving propaganda. But like, if Bo Nix does not break his ankle on the second to last play, like they're in the Super Bowl. Like there's no way that the Broncos do not win that game. The Patriots scored 10 points, and 7 of them were because Jarrett Stidham threw the ball backwards instead of just taking a sack and put them on the 8-yard line. That was their only touchdown in the entire game. It was the only time they were close to scoring a touchdown.
I mean, I just like, so I don't even necessarily disagree with that. I just think you can basically do that for like everything. Like, oh, what if Joe Alt doesn't break his ankle? What if CJ Stroud didn't get a lobotomy a year ago? What if Patrick Mahomes doesn't tear his ACL? What if Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh decided to come together instead of like having some kind of war behind the scenes and deciding they hate each other? What if Brandon Beane acquired a wide receiver at some point? And again, none of this is saying that Drake May sucks or that the Patriots suck or even that the Patriots can't win this game. I think the Patriots can win this game. It's a 4.5 point spread. It's like a weighted coin flip. What it is saying is that I don't necessarily disagree with what you're seeing in the public, which is, well, the Seahawks are just going to roll. Seahawks are just going to run the ball. JSN will make like 1 or 2 incredible plays. They'll limit the amount of total dropbacks that Darnold has. Clint Kubiak is going to put him in these insanely good spots. Yeah. And it will kind of be on May to take the ball and change the tenor of the game. And maybe he will, right? And maybe we will think about Drake May very differently after this game.
I mean, I'm not... despite what I just said, where like, you know, I think empirically looking at how horrible they played on offense last week, that if they weren't against a backup, I think it's very unlikely they would have won that game. But yeah, I do think they have a reasonable chance in this game. I would pick Seattle like straight up, like in terms of what the odds are. I don't think I'm actually gonna bet either team in this game. If I was to place a wager, like I'd probably place it on the New England money line before like eating a bunch of minus money on Seattle, to be honest. But I would pick Seattle straight up. I just think, like, I don't know what we saw from. It's a little odd to me, I guess, that the public view of Darnold, because I mean the San Francisco game, Darnold basically didn't even have to participate in, right? Like they were just up by 1 million immediately. Ken Walker had a bunch of huge plays. They had the kick return, and I think Darnold threw like, what did he throw, like 15 passes? Like it was like non-existent. So basically, he had the one game that was sensational last week, legitimately sensational. And I feel like the public went from, you know, you can't trust Sam Darnold in the playoffs. He's gonna melt. And then he had one incredible game,
one good game,
which was fantastic. Like can't take anything away from that. And now it's like, well, he's figured it out. Like he's perfect. And it's like probably somewhere in between that, those two things. And I do think that the Patriots have legitimate advantages that the Rams didn't have defensively. Like Christian Gonzalez is an elite corner. The Rams have no one who's particularly good in their back end. The Seahawks only really have one wide receiver you need to be super worried about, especially because for some reason they only play Rashid Shaheed on like 40% of the snaps.
So it's so bizarre. Trade for him midseason. He like smashes every time he gets the ball. He's this incredible punt returner. They give him rushes, and yet they're just like, yeah, we're gonna give the ball to Cooper Kupp instead.
So like if you were to tell me like how do you stop the Seahawks offense, I'd be like, well, you need to be able to generate internal pressure. Patriots have a great chance of doing that. You got to have a cornerback who has the chance to, no one's going to take away JSN, but handle him as best you can. Patriots have that in Christian Gonzalez. And you got to be able to stop the run so that you can force them into more obvious passing situations. And the Patriots have done that basically every time Milton Williams has been healthy. So I think they're going to give Drake May opportunities. I don't think that Darnold is going to just mow down the field like he did against the Rams last week. I'd be really surprised if he did. And yeah, I still am a Drake May believer. I don't think he just completely sucks now just because he's played poorly in recent weeks. He's going to have 2 weeks off. I think he has a good, strong mental makeup. So yeah, I think they could not easily, but I think they could definitely win this game. I think they're like, I don't know I'm not good enough at math to do like the percentage they are to imply to win based on their money line thing, but like I would wager that they're at least
like
that.
I think it's like 58% or whatever, 58, 42, like roughly.
Yeah.
I would also have to pull up a calculator to get it exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a good way to start thinking about this game. We have got fresh projected ownerships in here on Run the Sims. We have got flex ownerships. We have got all the projections sitting here. So basically, what you have is an unbelievable portion of the captains for this slate are going to come from Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, who are projected for 20.4 and 21.9 points. Then you've got Ramondre Stevenson and Drake May basically making up the rest of it. And I wonder if that captain ownership on Ramondre actually might even be a little bit low because the salary difference from him, from Walker to him and JSN to him is rather large. I do agree with this captain ownership on Darnold being really low because one, he does not project that well. He projects worse than Drake May, significantly worse, like 3 points worse. And anyone who is building these lineups by hand, like they're not putting it through a sim, they're not putting it through a computer. They're saying, in what world is Sam Darnold the MVP or the captain and JSN is not? It just like
right.
Nobody actually thinks that's going to happen. Like he'd have to get like a rushing touchdown or something.
Yeah, I mean it's like if you look at the FFPC playoff challenge stuff, right? It's like nobody wanted to click Sam Darnold because they were like, if the Seattle passing game has a big game, it's just going to go through JSN anyway. So why do I want to put Sam Darnold in my lineup for? I don't think that applies as much in a single game slate. When we're talking about one game versus playoff wide thing. If Gonzalez keeps JSN in check and he has a good game, but he doesn't score and he goes like 7 for 96, and Darnold throws 2 touchdowns and one's to Kupp and one's to AJ Barner, or maybe runs in one. Like, yeah, it's very easy to envision how in one game he gets in the captain slot. So I probably like him at that ownership, at the 2% ownership. If you had one lineup, who would your captain selection be? Do you think at this stage?
It would be Walker. It would be Walker.
These ownerships are roughly right.
Yeah, assuming these are correct, it would be Walker over JSN for me. 1, for the savings. 2, because I think we actually I wonder if we do get kind of what's happened in the back half of the season, which is JSN is like such a freaking good bet to get 17 DraftKings points. Maybe not as good of a bet to get 32 DraftKings points. I mean, Walker now is getting the goal line work. Although, I mean, it does need to be stated, George Halani did play 30% of the snaps in the conference championship. Like they did basically do like
how many touches though? Like
he got 4 targets. He did get 4 targets.
For sure. But like watching the game, I haven't actually looked at the box score from that game, but my vibe watching it was that he was replacing most of the Charbonnet role from last year, which was
Yeah.
the pure. Yeah, so he has 3 carries for 4 yards, 4 targets. Walker has also 4 targets, 19 carries. My vibe was very much that, and I think this would show in the data that Alani was basically doing the 2024 Charbonnet, which is 3rd and 8. It's the 2-minute drill. The Samaje P. Ryan snaps, if you will, like the strict long down
Exactly.
stuff, but was not the goal line back, was not mixing in on 45% of the regular 1st and 10 carries, none of that stuff. And so it's very much like Walker, I think, was maxed out to what you could reasonably expect or even would want Ken Walker to be in. I'm with you. I think equal ownership, lower salary, very similar projections. They're reasonable favorites in the game. New England has about as good of a corner as you can possibly have to throw at JSN.
Is Gonzalez though? Because isn't Gonzalez kind of like bigger and rangier? Like I feel like
yeah, I mean,
JSN might be the type of guy who can like sort of get like underneath or get like I don't know. JSN is so crafty and so agile,
right. He's
and
not twitchy enough.
He's just so twitchy. Yeah.
Look, when we get into not just wide receiver versus cornerback matchups,
right.
we're getting into stylistic wide receiver versus cornerback matchups. That might be out of our particular.
I would say that's probably out of our range of expertise.
That might be out of our expertise. But you that's a legitimately good point. Like I think that there's some ball knowingness to that. That maybe stylistically, you might prefer to have Christian Gonzalez on like a Nico Collins.
Nico Collins, Devontae Adams, exactly. Like that was like my it's like Gonzalez is going to be really good on that guy. I think that the most interesting thing to think about from the Seattle perspective, like if you grant all those things is true, that Seattle is going to have the upper hand in this game, that you do not think that Sam Darnold is going to wake up in a Scooby-Doo movie seeing nothing but ghosts, you need to start thinking through who is likely to finish second on the team in receiving, or who do I disagree with the market on? Is it Kupp? Is it Shaheed? I mean, the huge issue you're going to have with Shaheed is going to project significantly worse than Kupp. I think he actually projects worse than like Matt Collins. Yeah, like basically the same as Matt Collins, slightly better than Demario Douglas. But you are going to have to pay the slap tax on Rashid Shaheed because everyone loves, like, don't ask your law buddies this. Ask like your friend who has a DraftKings account but doesn't play best ball and is like cooking up bets for this game. Ask him like, oh, like who's like your sleeper man? Who am I gonna bet for King of the End Zone on DraftKings, like the longest touchdown? He's like, dude, no one's really thinking about it, but this guy Rashid Shaheed, like everyone who's slap or slap adjacent loves Rashid Shaheed in this spot.
I mean, I bet I hit Rashid's over total yards last week, and he got it on like the first play, right? it was awesome.
I believe it was their first play. He had a 51-yard catch, and that was his only stat in the game.
Was it actually? I never even realized that was his only stat. I had the over 31.5 total yards. He hit that on play 1, and I was like, check. I didn't realize he never did anything else for the entire rest of the game.
Well, it's like his week 17 or his week 16 game. He scores the punt return touchdown. He had the 30-yard rush, and they didn't give him the ball for the rest of the game. Far be it for me to criticize the job that Mr. Kubiak is doing, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Which then
it means is maddening. He's so good, and he's not like. I used to be kind of a Shaheed bear, but like I don't know, like I watched some of the Saints All 22 and stuff this year, and like cause I was curious about Rattler and Chuck. He's not just sick in the way that like a Kadarius Toney is sick. Like he's not like he obviously can do that stuff at a really high level. Like he's a great kick returner, punt returner. He's super fun on reverses. Like he can do all that stuff, but. He's not JSN, but like he is a real boy wide receiver.
He's a real receiver.
He can do wide receiver things. There's no reason why they can't just have him run like a slant, and do that stuff. So it is odd that he's used in such a gadgety role, but Yeah, I do expect he'll be represented. Probably, to be honest, probably overrepresented for a player who's like over under is like 1.5 touches
I mean, he's
on
got
offense.
one catch in the postseason.
I mean, look, if you are gonna play Shaheed, just pair him with the Seattle defense, man. I mean, you got to get the double dip.
He is really good. I actually wonder if the Seattle defense at 18% owned, maybe that's just the answer. Maybe the Seattle defense is just like you're all in. They certainly look under-owned to me at the captain.
I think they're under.
They're like they could definitely get 5 sacks, a strip fumble. Like if this is the sort of game where we are all bored and you know the people are just talking more about the commercials and wanting to go home at halftime, that's the Seattle defense script, right?
Well, I like the Seattle defense, but what's the Patriots defense ownership? Even lower, right?
Patriots defense is going to be super low. We've got the Patriots defense at 4,000 at 16%, although marginally more owned in the captain, which is interesting. I mean, that's algorithmically driven. So
I think it just makes sense in that the Patriots have fewer obvious captain options if you're projecting a Patriots win than this. Like the Seahawks, the Seahawks defense has to outscore. Or, I mean, they don't because of the salary differential, but. The way people will think about it is like if I'm projecting the Seahawks win, it's just easier to talk yourself into like Seahawks win through JSN, they win through Walker. The Patriots, like I think Ramondre is a pretty safe play at this point, but it's been a split for most of the year until recently. So I can see people not being as sold on that as Walker, and then obviously their receiving is just super spread. There's no like JSN type guy that you can just lock onto. So I like the Patriots defense, though. I think that Darnold's been like this all year. He's been really really efficient, but he's interspersed super efficient games with multi-turnover games. Like that's been the entire year. He was. I think was the top 2, like you said, in adjusted yards per attempt in the NFL this year. He was also, I think, number 1 in turnovers at the quarterback position. So, if the Patriots were to win this game, I'm expecting that comes because Williams and Barrymore beat up on their guards. Sam Darnold makes a few bad decisions, and you can get the feedback loop with Darnold where like if things start going down,
that's such a good way.
Falling behind, he just keeps throwing more picks. So like,
yeah.
A Darnold in motion must stay in motion. If he starts throwing touchdowns and things are going well, he's just going to keep slicing and dicing. But like if things start to go sideways on him, it can snowball on him in a hurry.
That's such a great way to describe it. I've never heard the feedback loop terminology applied to Darnold quarterbacking, but that is it. It's like if he's confident early, if he's just throwing strikes and you're letting him play with the lead, like he'll kill you. Because Darnold is clearly much better than his Jets Panthers tenure, and I'm sorry, man, just clearly much worse than the quarterback on the field this year for the Seahawks, right? Like if the Seahawks give him a 4-year, $180 million contract, like they're just not going to be that excited about that. Like, just kind of is one of those things, but I like that.
He's a good quarterback, but he is a very high variance good quarterback.
He's a good quarterback who, and I guess this is honestly unfair because we've seen guys like Stroud, guys like Herbert struggle so much when their surrounding context gets worse. He's a system quarterback in the sense that you have to fit the system to his strengths. But that's basically true of everyone these days. I would say Mahomes and Josh Allen are maybe the only two. Maybe Drake May is not a system quarterback because I don't think that the Patriots system is like all that sophisticated or anything. So in terms of cheap Seattle shitters, you've got Bobo, who in the postseason has run 17% of the routes, Derek Young, who has run 5% of the routes. The complicating factor amongst the tight ends is that Elijah Arroyo might be activated for the first time in like 6 games for the Super Bowl, which means that Sober probably goes to 0. And you also remove the snaps from Brady Russell and apparently Robbie Oots listed as questionable for this game. So
Okay.
maybe they'll have, if both their fullbacks are questionable, so maybe no fullbacks for Seattle.
Yeah, maybe no fullbacks. Flip the slate on its head.
I mean,
Completely.
I will say that if I'm imagining the victory cigar for the Seahawks, look, it's the classic fullback touchdown play. It's the play action roll to the right. The tight end runs his route. The fullback runs his route. It's the Patrick Ricard touchdown, right? That we've all seen happen.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
and the $200 guys and Sobert are sort of interesting in the sense that it does allow you to get Darnold, JSN, and May in all together in one lineup. I don't think Collarup's going to play because I think Arroyo is going to be back. And assuming Arroyo is back and is playing in this game, he is super interesting just because he's like just a straight up receiving tight end. Like if the team feels comfortable enough to activate him, I would like him.
Yeah, I mean he doesn't have a very consistent role. Barner's clearly the guy, but like, you know, Shaheed doesn't have a very consistent role. He's $4,200. Like if we're just talking about a guy who could make one big play up the seam for a touchdown, like, you know, Arroyo is not that different of a bet than Rashid Shaheed in terms of like a guy who's going to be on the field 25 to 30% of snaps, but has some explosive ability. It's totally possible.
It is totally possible. All right, let's look at some of the I guess let's talk a little bit. We just did a lot of Seahawks talk. Let's talk about the Patriots. What do you guess Josh McDaniels' game plan is for this game? I mean, how different is it going to be? Are we going to see a wrinkle with more Demario Douglas, more Kyle Williams? Are they going to try to play? My guess is they probably try and play a ton of 12, even with Matt Collins back, that they just try and keep everything kind of protected, keep May upright, limit the turnovers, give the defense a chance to make a play, give Marcus Jones a chance to make a play in the return game, like kind of almost courting a low possession, high variance style game.
I think that's probably right. I mean, it depends on what you want to accomplish, because playing 12 against Seattle will not affect how they play defense. They will play nickel against your 12 personnel regardless. So, you know, if your goal is to run the ball a lot, then, you know, getting heavy, because you're going to be running on nickel defense all game long if you want to do that. If your goal is to get in 12 to pass against weaker pass defense, Seattle's not the team for that. You might as well just spread it out, and that's why we kind of saw the Rams do more of. I think earlier and for most of this season, the Patriots were in the latter camp, where they were not that good at running the ball. They were really only getting in these heavy personnel sets to get man coverage, because their wide receivers are better beating man coverage. But recently, you know, Stevenson has just been on a tear since coming back from injury. May's been playing pretty poorly. I think that they are actually, more of a legitimate running team at this stage. It's probably what they trust the most right now. So yeah, I think getting 12 and feed 38 and see what happens is probably the game plan.
I mean, Hooper 2,000. He is 3% projected on the flex. I mean, I would guess that's a little light. I would probably move him up just a smidge when I run stuff. But there is no doubt that he does play a pretty instrumental role in teams in terms of what the team actually does. If we look at their postseason games, I mean, 27% of the snaps, he and Hunter Henry each have 14% targets per route run, just on very different numbers of runs. Hooper maybe even marginally more likely to pull up with the no one's covering me in the back of the end zone. Where is everyone else on the screen?
Classic
Touchdown.
Austin Hooper type touchdown.
That is a classic Austin Hooper touchdown. And then what do you think about, so Hollins, by the way, for those of the uninitiated, if you're just now looking at stuff, is just going to be the giga mega chalk. He's like a starting player at 3,600. He's the highest projected player of all the guys below the kickers, which just kind of always ends up in being chalk. And I mean, I guess my thoughts on him are either he secures a 38-yard touchdown or he doesn't.
This is Mac we're talking about.
Yeah, Mr. Hollins.
Yeah, I mean, I think that his ownership is bad. Like, looking at our sweet projections over on Run the Sims, like his projection is 1 point higher than TreVeyon's, and it's 1.5 higher than Demario Douglas. They're all in the same price range, and Max projecting for 4 times the ownership of Douglas and 12 times TreVeyon's. Like, that's probably bad. But like, I agree with you from a vibes perspective that like Mac feels like somehow like more of a fun click.
Right.
Like I concede that, but yeah, I mean, we're talking about it's hard to know exactly what his role is going to be, and I would. Yeah, I would probably not be interested at that ownership. We'll see. I mean, if that ownership comes way down, then sure. But otherwise, like if we're just playing kind of cheap guys that we're hoping for the best on, like I don't need to play an owned Mac Hollins. So maybe that just means that ownership is wrong. But like if that's what the vibes are that are going to lift him, then yeah, I'll count me out.
I cannot help but feel that one of Douglas or Kyle Williams ends up being one, very good leverage on Mac Hollins, and two, it just first off, it feels like Demario Douglas scores a 62-yard touchdown out of nowhere on 13% of the routes, like once once a month for the Patriots. And then two, I mean, Kyle Williams, you see the 18.3 ADOT. The only targets Kyle Williams gets are just like absolute bombs. Now, he will definitely be the wide receiver 4 in the rotation. He'll definitely be behind Hollins. He'll definitely be behind Douglas. I like the idea of Kyle Williams in this game quite a bit. I think what I'm going to do when I run my set on Sunday is I will probably stab, like I'll probably take like 1% away from Hollins, 1% away from Douglas, and give Kyle Williams a little bit of extra. In my runs. One, because I think it's accurate, and two, because I want to have him overrepresented in my stuff.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm
with you on that. I'm more inclined to play him at like almost no ownership than Hollins.
We have to have a very uncomfortable conversation. I mean, first off, this TreVeyon Henderson ownership it's never been more wrong. I'm gonna message the guys right now. TreVeyon Henderson is $3,800.
Is it wrong? Are we sure it's wrong? Like, who wants to play him? He played 4 snaps.
Buddy, the same people who are playing cheat. What do you think the combinatorial ownership of? Oh, this is a good question. Combinatorial ownership of Rashid Shaheed and TreVeyon Henderson when the computer runs it versus combinatorial ownership of Rashid Shaheed and TreVeyon Henderson when a human being is clicking the buttons. I bet it's like 100% over-owned. I'll tell you, anyone who is clicking the buttons is playing TreVeyon Henderson, even if they know better. I posited
I don't know
this.
about that, man. I mean, I'm not sure if I want to play him, and if I don't want to play him, then like who possibly could want to play him?
I was trying to think of this. The last time an NFL player could have had multiple 35 fantasy point games in a season, suffered no injury, and then in a showdown slate later in that season was less expensive than the team's kicker. There has to almost be no analog for that.
I mean, it's extremely bizarre, but I don't know. I don't think his ownership is going to be very high. I mean, it's one thing for like a receiver like a Shaheed that has like a limited role, and you're like, well, like we're only going to get 3 targets, but like at least they're all going to be potential explosives. Like, I mean, Henderson's like median scenario is like 4 carries, 1 target, right? I mean, there's obviously like there's a world where Stevenson gets hurt. There's a world where Henderson, he got into the game reasonably early last week, and so maybe had he taken one of those carries for a 15-yard gain, his role looks different, and that could happen this week. But just from like a median outcome perspective, the floor is like 0.8 fantasy points. I mean, he had literally 4 snaps last week, and I think he had, what was it, like 3 carries for 11 yards or something like that. Like that's so like not a fun click. I I mean, do I think he's a totally reasonable play if he is in fact 3% owned at $3,800? Yes. I mean, we're talking about like you don't even need much of a role at that point. If you get 12 snaps and 8 touches, you're probably coming out plus EV at that ownership and salary. And we know he's explosive, so there's possibilities there, but I'm not so sure that the ownership is that wrong.
All right, Roto Grinders.
I think if you want to play TreVeyon Henderson, you're pretty safe. I definitely agree that like if I did play him at that ownership and all of a sudden he came in at like 20% owned, I'd be pissed as hell. But
RG has him at 10.
Okay.
Solver has him in the flex at sort by ownership. Where is he? 13%. So 2% is definitely low. So I will but
okay.
I mean to your point, 10% also is pretty freaking low for a guy like this.
10 is probably maybe more reasonable. Shocking really that Adam would be mushing a rookie.
Shocking. Well, because I mean it's all the way they do it. Not to back Adam up because I actually don't like. Also, he just like keeps winning at NBA DFS, which is a little bit annoying as someone who has to work with him. But it flows from the algorithm, right? So it the ownership is like looks at the projection and then looks at historically what guys with that projection with that salary would project for. Anyway, that's really I guess I will say this on Henderson. There is almost no universe where I am not overweight on whatever the number for Henderson, both in captain and in flexes, because it'll just be like Showdown generally is very hard when you approach it from my perspective, which is someone who is not overly technical and not overly mathematical, and you're trying to do some ball knowing. I mean, is there an easier ball knowing thing than the guy who had 4 50+ yard touchdowns scores a 50-yard touchdown in the Super Bowl? Like, I don't know, man. It can, I know. And I guess the complicating thing is you would have expected Henderson's receiving role to have grown at some point over the course of the season, and it never did. He really never got more. Like, if anything, they were like happy to use Ramondre in that role because he's so good in pass protection.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm going to be overweight TreVeyon Henderson. Maybe I'll get there by Sunday. I'm not there right now. Look, this once every 7 years, Super Bowl is on my birthday. I want to enjoy it. I don't know if I'm going to have an enjoyable Super Bowl / birthday experience.
They gave you
TreVeyon Henderson.
They gave you a Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl for your birthday.
Yeah, it's not the best present I've ever gotten. That's for sure.
God. Was your last? Wait, hold on. Was your last one Rams Patriots? Or was it Chiefs 49ers 1?
I'm not honestly 100% sure. I think maybe that time they might have moved it up, so it was on the 1st instead of the 8th. The only other one that I can very distinctly remember being on my birthday is the worst one possible to have been on my birthday, which is the Colts Saints Super Bowl.
Oh,
which was tough.
Oh.
It was tough.
I don't love that. I did run through some of the highest sim ROI lineups, even used the shady advice tool. So this is like this took like 10 minutes to run the sims. 25,000 lineups generated, huge size of contest field, 10,000 sims through. This is the highest ROI lineup with I have not put any rules or anything on it. May captain, AJ Barner, Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, Ken Walker, Stephon Diggs. There you go. I wonder how many projected dupes that is. Not that many projected dupes, actually. Not that many. Yeah, I mean, look, you're just not going to find that many lineups without JSN, without Ken Walker, and without Ramondre in them. Like you exclude those guys, and you just are in a whole different part of the game tree. So I would say like my stances on this slate, Jacob, are going to be I'm very likely to be overweight TreVeyon Henderson in the flex. I'm very likely to be overweight Kyle Williams in the flex, and probably overweight both defenses. Like if
That's
everything
my biggest one.
Yeah. Like everything we're all saying about this game is like, these quarterbacks, it's like, all of that is leading up to defenses. Defenses just are not that fun. Yeah.
I'm going to be overweight both defenses. I might even be overweight both kickers. And I'll be overweight Ken Walker and captain for sure. That's probably what I'm sure of at the moment.
I'll say this, if I was going to lock one player, like if I was just like, I'm going to go to a Super Bowl party and I just want to have clean sweats, I would lock Ken Walker in the captain, lock Seattle defense in the flex, click optimize, run 150, and just upload. I think is what I would do if I was just looking to kind of just relax and not sweat anything too much. Let's build ourselves a lineup here on DraftKings for the Super Bowl. If we win $1 million on this lineup, I will give one of the commenters 10% of it. I got to be careful about saying 10,000 because we might chop it 900 ways. I believe the only Super Bowl that has given us a solo shipper was the aforementioned Rams Patriots shitter. So it's very uncommon.
That Super Bowl sucked. And the Patriots historically give us good Super Bowls. That Rams Super Bowl is an exception, but I think basically every other Patriots Super Bowl during the Belichick-Brady era, at least, I mean, we'll see about the new era, they were all fun. Like they had the 3 close ones they won by a field goal in a row in the early 2000s. The Eagles one was a blast. Obviously, the Falcons comeback was like one of the best ever. Both their Seattle Super Bowl was really good. Obviously the 2 Giants ones were epic. Like usually the Patriots deliver in this spot historically, except for the Rams one. So hoping for the best. All right. Well, we've been talking about him all week. We both like him. You're finally back. We lost you for a couple of weeks, but you're back to your roots. Put Ken Walker in the captain.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I never went away from my roots. I just knew that the Seahawks were never going to abandon Zach Charbonnet. It just was never going to happen. It was never on the table.
Like this is a rude thing to say. It's like I haven't, but like, what percentage do you think that the Seahawks Super Bowl odds increased when Zach Charbonnet tore his ACL? Like above like 5% better odds?
No, like really, really marginal.
I disagree.
I thought you were gonna say how much money did Kenneth Walker make from Zach Charbonnet tearing his ACL, because
he also made a lot.
The Seahawks probably were gonna offer him 3 years, $33 million, and now they'll probably offer him 3 years, $50 million or something. Like he has a chance to be the highest paid running back. Now I think.
We'll see where he goes. I mean, the most annoying thing possible would be if he stays in Seattle and then they're just so committed to this platoon that they then draft some other like Jonah.
That's far and away the most likely thing, by the way.
Yeah.
You know that. Like of all the possible scenarios, signing with Kansas City, signing with Dallas, signing with whoever, like far and away the most likely thing is he returns to Seattle for like a pretty good paycheck, and as Charbonnet recovers from his ACL, and I think Charbonnet only has 1 year left on his contract, they draft Emmett Johnson in the 3rd round, and Emmett Johnson becomes the new Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a big bummer. I hope Walker gets free of Seattle, but we'll
yes.
see. I thought he was going to until this Charbonnet injury. Now I'm pretty concerned, but no concerns for this week.
Let's do the Seattle Seahawks defense here, and we can maybe build like a Patriots passing thing on top of this. But I just this correlation, this Kenneth Walker Seahawks defense is really, really strong. Where do you want to go next?
All right, so we got Walker, we got Seahawks D. We're obviously playing this as kind of as a Seattle win. I'm gonna keep kind of onslaughting Seattle. I'll go with Jason Myers.
Okay, thinking through it, I also think this is going to be an under-owned combination because when you start doing the Darnold stuff or start doing the Seahawks win stuff, you want to include JSN. I wonder if you do play this, like JSN has a good raw score, but not necessarily a great score for his salary. And you get like 4 Jason Myers field goals, and JSN has 8 for 86 and is like the leading receiver in the game, but it ends up not mattering that much. So with that, I think you do Drake May on the Patriots side, and then I think you fade Ramondre. Or if you do Ramondre in this, you do it like Ramondre catches like 6 checkdowns or something.
Yeah, I think you can fade Ramondre in this type of lineup, right? All right, I will do. How much money do we have left? So we have an average of 72.50 per player.
Yeah, we have 14.5 left total.
All right. Although in this, okay, so, so if we went, so like, Henry's like a pointless guy to pick because we wouldn't have any money for anyone above him, and you're way under going below him. If you go, so like if we put Diggs in, then what does?
Well,
that
we could do
with?
something like
Who's
Diggs
interesting?
and Kyle Williams and just save a bunch of money and just be like, well,
Yeah, I mean, I guess on this kind of slate, you kind of want to be.
Yeah. Our
we
projected
hold
dupes are
on.
going to be very light. Now, this team does not project that well. So Walker captain.
I'd probably put like Shaheed and Kyle Williams in this kind of lineup. Probably would be my inclination.
All right. You know what? I mean, look, I'm never going to say no to Rashid Shaheed. Kenneth Walker, the Seahawks defense, Jason Myers, Drake May, Steph Diggs, Rashid Shaheed. I mean, this lineup, obviously, with Walker in the captain, has got to do some weird stuff. So we've got no Ramondre, we've got no Darnold, we've got no JSN, and we have the combo ownership of Seahawks and Myers, which is going to be very light together. So there we go, Jacob. We are done for the year on Thinking About DFS. You're going to have a bunch of new exciting stuff coming on Thinking About Thinking very soon. Anything that you want to prepare the people for before we head out of here?
Nothing huge. If you go to Thinking About Thinking now, I got my offseason dynasty rankings up. I got my big board rankings up. I don't think I've ever done big board rankings before, but I tried to get into the mind of a Davis Mattek, get into the salt mines, and start ranking players before the month of February started. And we'll have a ton more soon. I have a few sort of off-season projects I want to work on. I'll be spending much of my February getting deep into the rookie lab and getting all the prep for that. And we'll have a lot more content coming out. Thinking About Thinking shortly. I'll keep you guys posted over there. And I'll be back on stream with Davis soon. I think we got EDP chasing cranking up again starting next week. So we'll have a ton of off-season stuff. Excited to be around for it with all you guys.
Yeah, 100%. All right, everyone, make sure that you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for daily fantasy football videos, and we will see you guys all back tomorrow.